Hi out there, and welcome to the Revere Veterans Community Show. Today we have a special guest, a lovely lady from the city of Revere. Her name is Marye Benelli. Let me welcome you to the show, Mary.
Hi, Maurice.
And like I do with most of my guests before we start, please tell us a little about yourself, your growing up, your education, and your folks.
I'm so happy to be here. You're one of my favorite people, Morris.
Thank you.
I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma and went to school out of state, and then went back to Oklahoma, lived there for a few years, and then decided that I was going to come out here and live on the East Coast, and packed up everything and moved out here in 2010.
So, did you go to school here, or did you go?
No, I didn't go to school here, but Revere feels like my home. It really does. I'm planning on staying here for a really long time.
How long have you been here now, by the way, Mary?
I have lived in Revere since 2011. Yeah, not that long.
Okay.
But I volunteer a lot in the community, and that's made me feel like a bigger part of the community, really fast.
And I assume your children go to school here?
My daughter will start kindergarten this fall.
That's your youngest one?
Mm-hmm. She's tiny and looks like a miniature version of me. She's got red hair as well. And then I have two older children that go to school in Oklahoma, and my son is a teenager. So
You
I
never
have,
know about
I,
it.
know. I have a 13-year-old.
Go ahead. He'll be graduating elementary school pretty soon.
No, he's going into high school.
That's what oh, he's going into high school now?
Yeah.
That's pretty good at 13.
And then my oldest daughter is going into middle school.
Oh.
So that's exciting for them. And I'm a bookkeeper here in Revere. And
What kind of book, I mean, when you say bookkeeper specifically, what kind of bookkeeping?
just accounting and bill paying and keeping track of numbers.
That's pretty good.
It's peaceful for me, yeah.
The company, I don't want you to give the name of the company.
Thanks.
Please don't know, because, I mean, I don't want to publicize the company, but is it like a supermarket or a...
No, it's a local family-owned business. So, and I do some bookkeeping work for other people in East Boston.
Oh, and you do that, and the family-owned businesses in Revere too?
Uh-huh.
Yep.
It is.
Okay, and by the way, you have hobbies.
I do have hobbies.
I know.
When I have time for them.
Right, and before we went on the show, we were talking about your hobbies. You have hobbies like painting, cooking, and writing science fiction stories. Tell us something about that now, because I love to listen to that.
Morris, I'm a big nerd.
Not as big as me.
I think no, you know more math than I do. You know calculus, and still to this day. But I don't remember my calculus. I remember just about everything from biology class, anything science I ever read. I always read articles on space and other science fiction books. And my entire life, I've watched Star Trek and Star Wars and Firefly and Doctor Who and any other science fiction show, and have been writing science fiction since I was young.
Have you written books? I mean, little books?
I have.
Tell us something about that, Mary.
All of my books are science fiction. The one I'm working on right now is about colonization of Mars. It's a popular subject, and there are a lot of articles coming out about how we're going to do that. So it's really inspiring. On a day-to-day basis, I'll read something that will inspire me to go back and write, a whole nother chapter, and then go back and review everything that I've written and revise that as well. So it's actually an easy subject matter to hit on right now, because Mars is so popular. We have, the rover over there, and we're doing experiments with what we'd be able to feed our astronauts while they're on Mars, and I'm really excited.
Now, I'd like to ask you questions about science fiction.
Okay.
They want to send a man to Mars, which they say would take about almost 3 years, really, to shoot him up there. Have they ever come back, really, with the atmosphere testing there, that a person could live there without the helmet?
No, and you can't. The thing about Mars is that their magnetic the magnetic poles of Mars are not like Earth. We have a north and a south pole,
Right.
and that kind of keeps our ionosphere in a sort of bubble. Now, Mars's north and south pole magnetic poles have been disturbed, so they actually have like little pockets of magnetism that all their atmosphere escapes from, and the sun is wicking all of Mars's atmospheric stuff off into space. So Mars won't even have an atmosphere in the future, and we can do nothing to replace it. Now, we could go in and live underground, or we could build domes. Those are the options, but we won't ever really be able to have an atmosphere with trees and whatnot.
I was going to say, so we would actually need for us to supply our own oxygen so we could live there?
Well, I think in a system where you would build a dome or maybe live underground, you could plant greenhouses and whatnot, and there's all sorts of things being done with algae right now that will also take care of the CO2 and whatnot, so that you could do that without having to be in an open air environment. It would be more of an enclosed.
Because they showed on television, they did send a robot up there, you know.
Yes, Curiosity has taken some wonderful pictures.
Is that the name of the
views.
robot?
It is.
Thank you. We couldn't figure that out. Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Yeah, they sent back some beautiful pictures, though.
Absolutely. I have taken my desire to be an astronaut as a kid, and I just write about it now instead.
Curiosity, the robot. You know, I tell you, I don't know if I'm right or wrong on this, but you can correct me, and please do if I'm way out of line. Evolution, a lot of people don't believe in evolution, but evolution has been proven to be, fish at one time were on land. They couldn't live on land. They finally evolved to the water. People, eventually, if we send them to the moon or to Mars to live up there, and they have to adapt themselves like certain people do, like we have the Eskimos, they adapted to the north. The Africans adapted to the warm climate. Maybe generations to come, people might adapt themselves to other planets.
I think where things are going here is that we would do those adaptations. Like, we would probably do genetic modifications to people so they would have more resistance to radiation and sun exposure, because that would be a big issue on Mars. I don't think that we would wait for people to evolve or just hope it would happen. I think with the way science is going right now, we would probably take a more proactive role in sort of speeding that up to where we need to be, rather than just letting it happen naturally. Evolution exists. I mean, it's a controversial subject, but scientists even fairly recently have proven it in populations of sparrows that live off of highways. Their wingspan has become shorter in order to circumvent and avoid cars hitting them. Just in the span of 15 years, the study on the sparrows found that their wingspan shortened because the birds that survived had the shorter wings and were able to make tighter turns.
I was watching on the Smithsonian's channel, and they were talking about a gentleman, I can't think of his name, but he invented the microwave oven, and he invented it by accident. What happened, he was checking radar, but he had a chocolate bar in his pocket, and the chocolate bar melted. It got his pants all dirty, wet, because of the bar. So he said, he started...
What was he doing with a chocolate bar in his pocket in the first place, Morris? That's sort of unwise. Wouldn't it melt anyway?
No, it wasn't a wrapper. It was solid. This was a solid chocolate nut bar. It doesn't have to melt.
Okay.
You could put it in your pocket. It depends if you're outside in the sun, yeah. So he did another test with the radar, and he saw another bar melted. Then he realized that the energy coming out of the radar could be cooking things, and that's how the microwave was discovered.
Accidentally.
Most of the discoveries are accidental.
I know. No, we're doing a lot of experiments on people that are living on the International Space Station to see how long-term
7, 8, 9 months.
Long-term space exposure affects the human body. You know, there are problems like because gravity isn't working on you, you have sinus problems all the time because it all stays up there and doesn't drain.
But let me tell you, what up on the space station to actually float around
would be incredible.
There's no gravity.
I hope I live to a day when I can experience that, and when it's available to most people. So I think that would be exciting.
That was good. I'm glad I spoke to you about that. Now, how about your cooking? Tell us what you like to do about your cooking. And if you have a good recipe, let the people out there know. Just one.
I cook anything. I've been cooking since I was 7. I my favorite thing to cook, though, Morris, and it's probably the easiest thing, if I'm going to treat myself, I just make a nice ribeye with baked potato and usually asparagus or green beans on the side, depending on what looks good at the market that day. But if I'm going to be baking, I love to make cupcakes. I think everybody does that. And my favorite thing to make is my grandmother's banana nut bread. And a recipe is so old that it calls for oleo, and buttermilk is the leavener. But oleo is, you know, the old word for
Like
margarine.
Right.
So it's definitely a time-tested recipe. And the key is to freeze your bananas beforehand because it makes them sweeter. And
Mary, I'm going to tell you, I have the dishonor. I want to make sure people hear me. The dishonor of not being Italian, but I love Italian cooking. I do. But I love Italian stuffed peppers. Do you know how to do that?
I do know how to do Italian stuffed peppers.
Tell us what you do.
I usually only do them whenever I can find the peppers on sale at the market, you know, at the
Right.
back, because peppers are really expensive.
I know
that. And then I'll usually do a combination of ground beef and then a ground pork, but usually an 80-20, more beef than pork. The pork adds a little bit of fat that the beef doesn't have, even if I get like a higher percentage beef, fat-wise. Anyway, and then I use a rice base, and I've been experimenting with fresh herbs. I have indoor fresh herb garden, but I'll pick them up at the market and usually use parsley, black pepper, salt, some egg, and then whatever else I have around fresh, and stuff that in and just bake them. I usually put them in a little ramekin because peppers tend to sort of lose their, well, they lose their body when you put them in the oven. So I put them in a little ramekin that keeps all the juices and everything together, and they come out spectacular. I usually top them with sour cream, though. I don't know if that's a regional thing for me. I don't know if people do that here, but that's what we do where I come from.
You know, I want to get back to your science fiction because you brought up a good point. As a young lady, you're looking to the outer planets of Mars, which is actually going to happen.
Absolutely.
When I was a kid, we had two shows, comics. We didn't have TV in my days. They had Dick Tracy and Flash Gordon.
Right.
Dick Tracy used to have a wristwatch.
And Prince Valiant.
Yep. But Dick Tracy used to have a wristwatch where you could talk and think. We laughed. We thought these things were nuts. Flash Gordon was with the rocket ships going out to outer space. We laughed. We thought that was crazy. But it isn't crazy anymore because they have the rocket ships now. And now sooner or later, I understand some countries are even going to have missiles that'll be able to go over the ocean and come to us. I hope not, but come to us. So that's our future looking out. So now if we can go to Mars, then I'm sure eventually we could go to all the Saturn and all the other planets. But I have to ask you about the sun. The sun is tremendously warm. Doesn't that affect the people when they get on the other planets?
Well, it depends on what planet you go to.
Oh, I got to ask you one question, science fiction. I've always asked myself that. The sun is always giving off tremendous amount of heat energy. How come it never burns out?
Because it's constantly reacting. It's a constant nuclear reactor. There's constantly fuel, and it's reacting within itself. It's reacting within itself. It doesn't burn out because
it's been there for thousands of years.
Everything just keeps dividing, and matter is neither created nor destroyed.
Right.
And so,
oh, you took physics too.
The thing about the sun right now, we're waiting on its poles to flip, which it did about 11 years ago. And the most people will experience here is a little like sunspot disruption. Your cell phone might be a little wonky for the day.
Mary, excuse me, on the cell phones, does that give off radiation too?
It does, and there's a lot of debate on whether it's negligible or not. I use a cell phone, and the risk for me is not so great that I wouldn't. I think the convenience far outweighs the risk of
I don't have a cell phone, ironically.
At all?
None at all.
Is that out of principle or?
No, I just have my home phone. I guess I don't like to be disturbed. Like if I was sitting here, the phone would be ringing, or if I would be walking in the street. That way, if they want to get a hold of yours truly, they can call my home. And they're welcome to do it anytime.
So back to other planets that we would go to.
Yep.
And the sun being too hot. Mercury definitely would be uninhabitable. It's way too close to the sun, and even on the dark side of Mercury, it would not be.
They're always finding new planets, though.
Well, new planets out of our galaxy, and they're talking about things that come from Star Trek. They're talking about actual warp drives now, and how to create the warp to an energy efficient warp drive system.
Hold it before you go. If you had watched TV the other day on the news, they had a gentleman who is a billionaire in this country, and he puts out a lot of inventions.
Elon Musk.
That's his name. He said he could make a train go from...
He wants to build the Hyperloop. Now, he doesn't want to.
What do you call that?
The Hyperloop.
Loop, right.
He doesn't want to build it. He just wants to tell people how to.
build it, right.
Right. He's got a lot of things going on. Elon Musk has Tesla Car Company, which is the first independent car company to come about since the old days of Detroit.
Right.
And there were a lot of naysayers that said he couldn't do it, but he's done it. And their profits have shown an increase over the past few years. And then he also does some space work, independent private rocketing, which I think is also really interesting. So he has a lot going on, and I think he just wants to improve people's lives in general. And so he has this plan for the Hyperloop, but he doesn't have time to do it.
Also, there was a company in Israel that put out a car that runs on solar energy, strictly solar energy on a test basis. No gasoline, not just electricity, but it comes from the sun or from daylight. You don't even have to use much daylight. So eventually we're going to have all these things. What happens to the people who relied on the fuel-efficient cars? Fuel inefficient cars, let me say that.
I think the bigger issue is going to be, where do we put all of these cars that are and other vehicles that are no longer fuel efficient? Are we just going to crush them and put them into, we keep on making all of these new vehicles that are going to burn a fuel that is exhaustible. We will run out. So what are we going to do with the cars? Are we going to retrofit them? I think that's where a new in fact, there was a group of kids that just outfitted retrofitted a VW to run on social media, where every time somebody tweeted their social media name or Facebooked it, it vibrated a motor in the car, and it kept the motor going just because it got a Wi-Fi signal in. So no fuel other than people socially tweeting about this car, but they retrofitted an old VW Bug. So I think where a new business is going to be is to take all of these old cars and retrofit them to run off of things like sunlight and things like internet power and
sunlight or it's abundant of energy out there that
Correct.
they can use. And as you say, energy can not be created nor destroyed.
I think we should stop making new vehicles and start retrofitting the ones that we have and taking care of what we have.
Recycling them.
Correct.
Okay. Now I want to talk to you about, you got another good hobby. By the way, when we get finished with the show, I want you to give me the recipe for the step peppers.
Okay.
Right here. Okay.
I'll write it down.
I'd love to have it. You also like to do painting.
I do.
Tell us about what kind of painting you like to do, Mary.
I like oil paint. It's my favorite medium because...
What do you paint? Like people?
No, it just
action?
depends. It depends
Scenery?
on my mood. Scenery, people. I've done landscapes. I've done modern. It depends on how I'm feeling, and maybe how I'm feeling, like decorating my house at the time. Or,
oh, I see.
I enjoy oils because I can go back to them. They don't dry very fast, so I have a really busy life.
I can see that.
And I can and I can sit down and paint some, and then leave it and come back 2 days from then, and it will still be wet enough for me to work with it and still
maybe someday,
change things.
Mary, your painting might be hanging in the Guggenheim or the Museum in New York.
No.
I've seen some of your paintings. They're beautiful, really.
I think art is, for me, something that I do just for myself. And the same thing with writing. It's something that I do
I
just
know
for
you
my
like
show.
to write the science fiction, but you know the science. Really, what is science fiction today will not be science fiction tomorrow.
Absolutely not. No, and my favorite author is Ray Bradbury. And I met him as a child, and that was really inspirational. You know, the Martian Chronicles and whatnot. And a lot of the things that were in the Martian Chronicles are coming about, too.
Tell us something about that.
Well, Martian Chronicles, and I was also going to go on earlier about Star Trek. You know, there were things that people said were not going to happen. You were talking about the watches on Dick Tracy.
Right.
Well, if you watch the original Star Trek, they have these tablets that they go about and they sort of touch the tablet and they, you know.
They do it now with the iPads.
We had iPads in Star Trek. and you have to think, like, maybe Steve Jobs got his inspiration for that, and science fiction that's being written right now is going to inspire children like Steve Jobs was to create the newest stuff.
I got to tell you, I was watching one of the channels when I had time. They had an iPad that you don't even have to do with the fingers down. All you got to do is talk to it.
Oh.
And it comes right out. In other words, you tell it what you want, the iPad types it for you. I'm looking to go to the nearest place, the iPad answers you, and it tells you how to get there.
Right.
I don't know how they do that. So, no, I mean, you know, it's like, I mean, if I was walking in the street with an iPad talking, they'd lock you up, I think.
Oh, yeah, no, it used to be unacceptable to walk down the street talking to yourself, but now because we have Bluetooths and whatnot, you never know if somebody's actually crazy or if they're on the phone. It's great.
Well, it depends what part of Revere you're in.
Oh.
That's good, Mary. Oh, I want to ask you, how do you feel about the casino coming to our city? Which I hope it does eventually. I've asked people that, and I tell you, most of them are for it.
You know, everyone I talk to seems to be really positive here in Revere.
It's likewise.
I feel like now that we have our host agreement in and we have we have the budget in, the city budget in, and everything is seeming to come together. I think that the general atmosphere here is, we all want it.
Well, I want it for two reasons. Number one, it would create a lot of jobs for the veterans and the community. And number two, especially for the people that own homes, their taxes might be leveling off or going down, and hopefully not going up.
You think so?
That's what I would like about it. But more important, it would create jobs.
I feel like the casino coming here will also bring in other industries and businesses.
That's right.
You know, we'll be able to develop the beachfront. You know, Revere has one of the most underdeveloped, beautiful beaches
in the country,
which is great. But we need more business, and I think if we're able to come in and develop that in a cohesive, thoughtful manner, it would be beneficial to everyone.
Yep, that would be good. Now, Mary, we got about 4.5 minutes left. Take 2.5 to 3 minutes of your own time and say whatever you like to say and whatever you like to say.
Oh, Morris, I'm no good at being put on the spot. You know
No,
that.
don't, whatever you want.
No,
What would you like to see in the future for the city? Let me put it to you that way. Oh, before you say that there, I had a gentleman on this morning. I asked him about putting video cameras on the streets. So, you know, because of crime things that might be going on, not necessarily that having crime, but in case you do, you can see who did what, like they do in Boston. In England, most of the streets do have cameras on there. Would you have any objection to seeing cameras on the streets? Be honest, though.
My personal experience fairly recently, in the last year here, tells me that I would like a camera in certain instances. But my opinion about that in general is sort of Orwellian atmosphere. I don't really want to do a 1984 surveillance state. But there are instances such as there was an arson in my neighborhood, and I wish that there had been a camera
Did some deliberately set fire?
Yeah. And I wish there had been a camera to capture that person while they were doing it.
Like in Somerville, they had a lot of deliberately set some fires in there.
Right.
And if they had the cameras, they would have seen who did what.
Right, but then you get in that slippery slope of
Big Brother watching you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
so
if you don't
I'm sort of torn about the issue, actually.
Well, I'll tell you, in my generation when I was young, we used to have the police walking the streets. So
Absolutely.
we didn't need the cameras. We had
Walking the
camera-
beat.
We had the cameras right there, human cameras. Today you got, and when I was a kid, we only had 75 to 80 million Americans. Now you got 350 million Americans.
Right.
So I don't mind the cameras, really. I think it would be helpful to the police. It would be helpful to law enforcement, especially, because if a crime is committed, like they caught the Boston bombers. If it wasn't for the cameras in the private stores in the city of Boston, they never would have been caught.
You know, Morris, that's also a pretty hard statement to make. I wouldn't say that they would have never been caught. I would say that possibly all the cameras facilitated them being caught faster. I had full confidence in the Boston PD that they would have caught those guys without all of the cameras. And in fact, a lot of the social media actually convoluted things and confused things about who the actual suspects were.
At the beginning,
because people
right.
started sending out pictures that they had taken at the scene before the explosion, and hey, there's this guy looks suspicious and this guy. And we saw that here in Revere, where they came to our buildings here because they thought these students had been the perpetrators. And
Okay,
it was just
Mary,
that
I got to cut you off now.
Okay.
I don't want to be rude, but we're running out of time. But I want to
Absolutely.
thank you for coming on the show.
no problem, Morris.
God bless you, and thank you for
You're
taking
very
the time
welcome.
off and coming on our show. And to people of Revere, God bless Mary. God bless you people out there, our troops, and especially the citizens of Revere. Until the next time, thank you for listening.